Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Stories of Language Learners. I am your host, Charles. In today's episode, we're gonna talk about why I decided to start a podcast, and I wanna share with you 4 reasons why you should start a podcast. And I truly hope that this episode will inspire you, maybe to do the same, create your own podcast. Okay, let's get started. Why I decided to start a podcast. First of all, I am a podcast lover. I think that I spend at least 1 hour and a half or maybe 2 hours per day listening to a podcast. I still remember the first time I listened to a podcast. This was back in 2018, I guess, not too long ago, but when I discovered this kind of media, podcasting, I fell in love with it, and I was thinking about creating this podcast for so long, but now I bought a microphone and I'm really excited to start this journey. But to be honest, it's kind of weird to talk to a microphone, but I know that I'm not alone. You are listening to me, so thank you so much. Okay, let's dive into the reasons why I decided to start this podcast. I am an English learner, so with this podcast, I can practice my speaking, I can improve my pronunciation, and increase my vocabulary. I must say that I'm not fluent in English. I still have a lot to learn, but I hope that I can improve my English by doing this podcast. Actually, the whole idea behind this podcast is, I remember someday someone told me that it's very powerful when you record yourself and when you can listen to yourself, especially if you are learning a second language. So here is a tip for you. If you are learning a new language, if you want to get better at speaking, you can record yourself and listening to yourself, or listen. Oh, I hope you get it. Or you can do like me. You can start a podcast. I will probably listen to myself in this podcast over and over again. And by the way, Anchor, this app, is the easiest way to start a podcast. This platform is phenomenal. When I found out about Anchor, I thought to myself, oh man, nowadays it's so easy to start a podcast and to put content out there. Yeah, okay, let's continue. The reasons why I decided to start this podcast. I want to share my learning experience and the tools, methods, and resources that I've been using to learn English. I would like to inspire people who think that it is impossible to speak a new language, because I was one of these people. And here I am, speaking another language. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. Oh, I must say that my native language, it is Brazilian Portuguese. I also wanna interview people who went through the process of learning a second language. Maybe you were wondering, Charles, why interview people? Okay, let me tell you a story. When I first started learning how to code, the first thing I did was to look for a podcast related to learn how to code. Then I found a podcast called Learn to Code with Me with Lawrence Bradford. Oh, I hope that I pronounced her name correctly. This podcast inspired me so much to learn how to code. Why? Because the idea of this podcast is to interview people who went through the process of learning how to code. I heard so many incredible stories. I remember before listening to that, I was kind of confused and I had no idea where to start or how to start learning. Because in tech, you have a lot of paths that you can choose to follow. Anyhow, these stories inspired me a lot to continue and not give up. So I truly believe when you hear stories of people who achieved what you want to achieve, this motivates you to keep trying. So maybe you were like me. I studied English for years, but I was so afraid to speak. I was worried about what people would think about my pronunciation. I was terrified of committing mistakes. But I promise you, when you hear stories from people who overcame their shyness or their lack of confidence to speak, these stories will be super motivating for you. And that's why I will interview people who went through the process of learning a new language, and I'm sure that we will learn a lot from them. I love English not just because it is the global language, but because this language can open so many doors and opportunities out there. With English, you are able to have access to a variety of information. You can travel everywhere. And my favorite part is that through this language, you can connect and communicate with people from so many different cultures and backgrounds. I really love to have conversations with people from other countries. Now, let's talk about 4 reasons why I think you should start a podcast. Number 1, you can record yourself speaking in your target language. This can help you a lot with your pronunciation, especially if you don't have people to practice with. Number 2, you don't have to spend money to start. You can use, for example, your phone to record your voice, and there are so many resources on the internet that you can use to create your podcast for free. In my case, I had no idea where to start, so I started to search on the internet and I found a super helpful guide that I would like to recommend. This guide is called How Do We Start a Podcast in 2020? The Complete Podcasting Tutorial. This guide was created by Pat Flynn. This guy has an incredible podcast called Smart Passive Income. You should definitely check it out. It is amazing, the resources that he shares through this podcast and also through this website. Number 3, you can make money with your podcast if you get sponsors, or maybe you can build your personal brand and also you can sell your products or services. And the last one, number 4, you can build connections by inviting people to come on your show. Okay, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something. If you liked this show, please share with your friends. I will include links of all the resources that I mentioned in the show notes, including where you can find me online. I would love to hear your feedback about the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.